Picture yourself driving on a highway at night. You're doing maybe 65, 70 miles an hour, and suddenly this incredibly thick fog just rolls in.
Oh, that is the worst feeling.
Right, you can't see the road lines, you can't see the headlights ahead of you, but you can feel, the heavy momentum of your own car just hurling forward in the dark.
Yeah.
And there's this very specific gripping dread that hits your stomach right then. It's not that you've crashed, it's the sudden realization that you are moving way too fast for what your eyes and your reflexes can actually process.
Exactly. You are entirely at the mercy of your own speed. The physics of the situation have completely outpaced your biology.
Yeah.
I mean, the margin for error just vanishes.
Yes.
And your nervous system understands that vulnerability long before your conscious mind can figure out, like, what to do with your foot on the gas pedal.
Right. Which brings us to the core of today's deep dive. Welcome, everyone. We are looking at a stack of really fascinating research today. Essays, psychological study, ecological models that basically argue that this specific highway in the fog dread is the defining condition of modern life.
Yeah, it really is.
We're trying to figure out why it feels like the world is spinning completely out of control, and not just politically or economically, but on a really visceral, sensory level. We're exploring technological acceleration, the loss of natural time, and our main mission today, how you can survive in this endlessly accelerating world without being totally consumed by its pace.
And, the most surprising part of the research we're looking at is the proposed solution.
Mm.
We aren't looking to better technology to save us here.
Right.
We're actually looking at the mechanics of natural ecosystems.
Which is such a wild pivot. But okay, let's dive into the problem first. When you look at the news or, scroll through your endless feeds, it's really easy to just assume we're overwhelmed by the sheer volume of negative events. But the underlying argument in these studies is that our dread isn't just about things being bad. It's about the fact that events are happening way too fast for human digestion. The researchers call this timeline collapse.
Timeline collapse.
Yeah.
Yet it requires a fundamental shift in how we view progress. Because if you think about it in terms of biological evolution versus technological deployment,
Okay.
under natural conditions, complex developmental sequences like the shifting of a climate or the adaptation of a species or even the slow spread of a societal norm, those take generations, sometimes centuries.
Right, it's a slow burn.
Exactly. That slow gradient gives humans, animals, and our institutions the time to actually adapt, to build resilience.
To develop cultural antibodies,
Yeah.
almost.
Yes, but timeline collapse is the compression of those centuries into just a matter of years or even months.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing climate destabilization, algorithmic radicalization,
Yeah.
the explosion of synthetic biology, all happening simultaneously.
So instead of walking down a slow, gentle hill where we can kind of catch our balance, the ground just straight up drops out into a cliff. Yeah.
But I want to push back on this a little bit because isn't speed also the goal?
How do you mean?
Like, if we invent a cure for a disease, we want to scale that to 1 billion people immediately, right? Scaling up is literally how we solve massive problems.
Well, sure. I mean, scaling has immense benefits. But what's fascinating here is that it introduces a really critical vulnerability when it comes to human behavior. It essentially severs consequence from the body.
Severing consequence from the body. Okay, unpack that for us.
So in a localized environment, your behavior is governed by immediate sensory feedback. If you pollute your local water source, you and your neighbors are going to get sick very quickly.
Right, you feel the consequence immediately.
Exactly. But technology bypasses that sensory loop. We now have factory farms processing tens of thousands of animals a day, or platforms reaching 1 billion users in a decade.
And the human brain fundamentally just cannot comprehend 1 billion of anything. We didn't evolve to hold that kind of number in our heads. We really didn't. Which creates this highly dangerous psychological dynamic. You get scale without sensation, impact without intimacy.
Oh, wow. Impact without intimacy.
Yeah, think about a person sitting in a boardroom or writing a piece of code. They are making decisions that ripple out across the entire globe, fundamentally altering supply chains or, human attention spans. But physically, in their body, they feel absolutely nothing.
So it's exactly like driving that car in the fog, but the steering wheel has a 5-minute delay.
Yes. That is exactly it.
By the time you realize you've turned the wheel way too hard to the left, the car has already hit the guardrail. The sensory feedback loop that normally tells a human being, like, hey, slow down, this is dangerous, has just been completely removed by the sheer scale of the tools we're using.
The feedback arrives far too late to actually change the behavior that caused the impact in the first place.
Okay, but I'm stuck on this idea of the tools we use because the common defense, right, is always that technology is just neutral.
Right, the old hammer argument.
Yeah.
Yeah, a hammer can build a house or it can break a window.
Yep.
So if our tools are causing this timeline collapse, why don't we just use them differently? I mean, we built the factory farms, we coded the algorithms. It feels like we should just be able to tweak the settings, right?
Well, the idea that we hold the tool and the tool doesn't hold us is probably one of the most persistent and comforting myths of the modern era.
A myth.
Totally a myth. Every single period of technological expansion relies on that exact philosophical reassurance. But tools are not neutral objects just sitting passively in our hands. Tools actively reorganize the environments in which we live.
Okay.
And by changing the environment, they dictate what decisions actually feel natural or necessary or even possible to us.
I want to highlight the historical examples from the text here because I think they really clarify this. The printing press is always held up as this, ultimate triumph of human progress.
But it didn't just print books faster. It completely restructured epistemic authority. Like, before the printing press, truth was highly centralized. It was usually controlled by the church or the state. But once anyone could just print and distribute a pamphlet, the whole mechanism of who got to decide what was true completely fractured.
Yeah, and the automobile is another really profound example of this.
Yeah.
The car didn't just move bodies from point A to point B a little more efficiently. It literally redesigned the physical world.
Right.
It necessitated the creation of highways, which, by the way, tore right through existing neighborhoods. It birthed the suburbs. It completely changed the layout of grocery stores and schools.
It created what some sociologists in the sources call the geography of loneliness.
The geography of loneliness, yes.
Yeah.
A built environment where physical isolation is just the default state of existence. You don't just choose how to use a car when the entire landscape has been paved to require one. The tool metabolizes its users.
Wow. The tool metabolizes its users. So this whole idea that we possess total human sovereignty over our technology, that we are the masters of the machine, is just a retrospective illusion.
It really is. Because, sovereignty over our choices requires two things: legibility and pace.
Legibility and pace.
Yeah. You need to be able to read a situation clearly, and you need the actual time to process it. When the consequences of your actions unfold across these invisible global supply chains,
Yeah.
or when neural architectures are being actively reshaped by interfaces in real time, you lose legibility and pace.
We tell ourselves we're in control, but the tool has already reshaped the world while we were busy trying to figure out how to regulate it.
Exactly.
There's a specific phrase from the research regarding this loss of agency that I think is so vital for you listening to understand. It's the loss of somatic agency. Somatic meaning physical, right? Grounded in the body, the capacity to physically feel the real-time weight of our choices. The researchers argue that, quote, distance is moral novocaine.
That's such a powerful line. And consider how ethical behavior is historically tied to proximity. Countless studies on decision-making show that we absolutely need felt consequence, like the visceral physical reality of looking someone in the eye or seeing the immediate damage of an action, to make grounded moral choices.
Right.
When technology inserts infinite distance between our impulses and their outcomes, our ethical behavior just degrades. It's so much easier to click a button that exploits a labor market halfway across the world than it is to look an exploited worker in the face.
Because distance actively numbs our moral reflexes.
Exactly.
Okay, so a technology systematically eliminates the friction, the time, and the physical proximity we need to make grounded choices. Where do we look for a system that actually works?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting.
Because the research points somewhere totally surprising. Not to better software, not to AI, but to the oldest technology on Earth: ecosystems, nature as the original counter-technology.
Right. And modern humans, we typically experience nature's timeline as this massive inconvenience.
Oh, for sure. We get frustrated by how slow a seed sprouts or the shifting of seasons. We want things on demand.
Exactly. But it is precisely this non-alignment with human urgency that makes natural systems the necessary corrective to our current acceleration.
I love this because ecosystems process massive, unbelievable complexity. A forest is managing, what, millions of data points at once? water distribution, fungal networks, sunlight, insect populations, and it does all of this without collapsing, but it doesn't manage it the way a tech company would.
Not at all, because a tech company is completely obsessed with optimization.
Mm.
Ecosystems do not optimize, they elaborate.
They elaborate.
Yes, they build stability through distributed feedback loops, through massive redundancy, and through a really high tolerance for inefficiency. If you actually look at a forest floor, it is deeply inefficient by Silicon Valley standards.
Right, there's overlapping decay, tangled roots, energy that seems totally wasted on decomposition.
But that inefficiency is actually the forest's immune system. It's what builds resilience. Technology tries to strip away all friction to maximize speed, which makes the whole system incredibly brittle.
Like when one optimized supply chain breaks, the entire global network freezes.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about what happens to the human brain when it encounters that natural elaboration, because the neuroscience in the sources here is just incredible. What physically happens to a human being when they step into a forest without a device?
Well,
Like without the constant compression of incoming information and no demand to instantly respond to anything?
the physiological changes are immediate,
Yeah.
and they are highly measurable. First off, your cortisol, which is your primary stress hormone, drops significantly.
Oh, wow.
And your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that handles complex planning, rumination, anticipatory anxiety.
Mm.
It finally gets a break from the constant barrage of micro-decisions. But the most significant shift actually happens in what's called the default mode network.
Okay, yes. Unpack the default mode network for us, because that really seems to be the core of the whole anxiety problem. Exactly what does it... Wait, scratch that. Let's just get into the basic mechanics of it. The default mode network is basically the brain's background processing engine, right?
Yeah, think of the DMN as your brain's simulation engine. When you aren't focused on a specific immediate task, the DMN activates. It's responsible for self-referential thought.
Thinking about yourself.
Right, thinking about yourself, ruminating on the past, and crucially, projecting yourself into the future to anticipate threats. Our digital environments completely hijack the DMN.
Because they keep it hyperactive by feeding it an endless stream of potential future anxieties and, like, social comparisons.
Exactly. So when you step into an environment governed by natural time, without notifications constantly pinging your phone, the DMN actually softens. It literally powers down because it's no longer being forced to anticipate the next immediate digital threat.
Your brain just drops back into the sensory present.
Yeah. Your body returns to its original temporal frame. You stop operating on the rhythm of algorithmic refresh rates, and you start organizing your senses around the movement of light, the ambient sounds around you, your own breath.
You are literally resetting your biological clock to the frequency it actually evolved to process.
Yes.
And what this sources emphasize is that this isn't about devolving. It's not some romantic suggestion to go back to being cavemen. It is a vital biological recalibration.
It restores your baseline. It gives your nervous system the chance to remember what actual uncompressed time feels like.
I mean, I completely understand the biology of it, but practically, I'm struggling with the application. Most people listening to this have jobs, they have mortgages, endless emails, obligations that literally require them to be plugged in. We can't all just throw our laptops into a lake and move to the wilderness.
No, of course not. And the goal is not technophobia or some total rejection of modern tools. The goal here is cultivating what the researchers call temporal sovereignty.
Temporal sovereignty.
Right. It's the conscious, deliberate act of withdrawing from the accelerating present, just to refuse the timeline it is constantly trying to impose on you.
Taking back the authority over your own pacing, the research suggests this requires physical, embodied practices of returning to slower time. And it doesn't have to be, a 2-week wilderness expedition. It can be incredibly localized.
Yeah, it's just about physical presence with duration. Taking the time to cook a meal completely from scratch, actually feeling the texture of the ingredients.
Or tending to a garden where you were literally forced to wait weeks to see the result of your labor.
Exactly. Moving through your neighborhood at foot speed instead of in a car. Making something tangible with your hands.
There is a really interesting political dimension to doing things slowly, too, that the sources bring up. When you take an hour to just be genuinely somatically present in your body, an hour where you aren't staring at a screen, that is an hour that cannot be colonized by the attention economy.
Oh, absolutely.
It can't be harvested for data, it can't be sold to an advertiser, and it cannot be accelerated.
You are building a temporal commons, time that belongs exclusively to your breath and the immediate physical world around you. We have so heavily devalued patience and long-term thinking in favor of immediate quarterly returns. an instant gratification. And it's to our own great detriment.
Yeah.
If we look at indigenous ecological knowledge, we see a profound intelligence of slowness that we desperately need to study.
This part was amazing to me. We tend to think of advanced technology purely in terms of hardware or software, but the research points out that indigenous seven-generation thinking is actually a highly advanced cognitive technology.
Yes, it's an intellectual framework designed to manage consequences at time scales that far exceed a single human lifetime.
It is structural intelligence. A satellite can take a high-resolution image of a valley, right, and give you immediate data on its current state. But a satellite cannot replace the knowledge of an elder who understands how that specific valley responds to a 100-year drought cycle.
Because they carry the relational history of the landscape. Seven-generation thinking forces the human brain to run simulations of consequences far beyond the immediate dopamine hit of a quick solution. The future is held in the body as an obligation, not just, some distant abstraction.
Okay, so let's say you actively cultivate this slowness. You practice temporal sovereignty. You spend the weekend in the woods, or maybe you just spend an entire afternoon in your garden with your phone turned totally off. You recalibrate.
Mm,
But eventually, Monday morning rolls around, you have to open the laptop, you have to log back in. The research highlights a very jarring phenomenon that happens when you cross back over that line.
yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the phenomenon of reentry. This is heavily documented among people who spend extended time immersed in natural time.
Okay.
When you return to ordinary digital culture after your baseline has been reset, the transition is deeply disorienting. And frequently, it's profoundly upsetting.
But why is it so upsetting, though? I mean, it's just normal life. It's the same inbox you left on Friday.
Because suddenly, the sheer pace of digital culture is exposed for what it actually is. The relentlessness of the information flow, the way complex social obligations are just compressed into tiny red notification bubbles.
The demand for instant opinions on global tragedies.
Right. It all suddenly looks completely unnatural to your newly calibrated nervous system.
It creates a perceptual gap. You finally see the machinery. For a brief window, your habituated relationship to accelerated time is just broken. And you realize that the speed of the modern world isn't just the unavoidable weather of reality. It is a manufactured construction. It's infrastructure.
And once you perceive it as a construction, it briefly becomes optional. You realize you don't actually have to operate at that speed to survive.
It's like realizing you're caught in a river current. You can't swim to the shore if you don't even know you're in a water.
Exactly.
Taking a weekend off to cook from scratch or hike doesn't structurally fix the global problem of technological acceleration. It doesn't rewrite the algorithms, but it preserves our human capacity to perceive the acceleration as a problem in the first place.
And that perception is the absolute precondition for any meaningful response. I mean, a body that has spent just a few days immersed in a forest without a screen knows something fundamental that cannot be easily articulated.
Right.
It knows the true length of an afternoon. It knows how much complex life is happening in what we just perceive as silence.
Yeah.
It regains the specific kind of intelligence that only arrives when there's absolutely nothing left to check.
Wow. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? How do you operate your vehicle in the fog? It means that to survive in a world accelerating faster than our biology can handle, you don't have to abandon technology. But you must actively cultivate temporal depth alongside it.
Yeah.
You have to find a way to hold both realities at once. The demanding speed of the modern connected world and the ancient unhurried rhythms of the physical world. The tidal rhythms and natural networks that predate literally every tool humanity has ever made.
We want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today. If just a few deliberate days of digital silence can fundamentally recalibrate your entire perception of time and expose the artificiality of our modern rush,
Yeah.
what else is waiting for you in that quiet? What other natural intuitions, hidden biological rhythms, or, deep creative instincts within your own mind are currently being masked by the endless stream of your daily notifications?
What might you discover about your own capacities if you simply gave yourself permission to leave a few things unchecked?
Exactly.
It's a really powerful question worth carrying with you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. The challenge for you today: carve out an hour of temporal sovereignty. Take a slow, device-free walk. Let the fog clear. Feel the actual speed of your own footsteps, and remember that you are the one behind the wheel. See you next time.